The blizzard 2016 seemed to catch the entire city by surprise this week. The city of Denver decided not to clean residential streets, saying the storm did not meet certain criteria. Meanwhile, when Denver Public Schools decided to close on Thursday, and how DIA handled the storm also have been called into question. Craig, I know it's easy to play Monday morning, or I guess in this case Friday morning quarterback of the blizzard coverage, but it seemed that even though we had a lot of weather forecasters saying it was going to be a big deal, we had a lot of delays and questions with entities from DPS to the city. What do you think?
Well, I'm a native, so I've seen a lot of snow, and that was epic. I mean, who could have predicted that? But I didn't hear, I knew it was going to snow, but not like that. It was just stay-at-home kind of day, and it's been that kind of year. My kids had 5 snow days, so they're going to have to go longer. And so when people say, oh, you know, it was worse this or then, yeah, there have been worse sustained blizzard, and if it's in January, it's a lot worse than in March. But who knows, maybe it'll snow like that again tonight, and I'll have trouble getting to the radio, because I don't think I could have gotten anywhere the other day. It's just a lot of people were stuck in the house, and if you weren't, my kid was supposed to go on a trip to DIA. Thank God I got my wife before she got too far on 225, because once you're at the airport and then Pena closes, you're trapped. And can I say one more thing? So many people caught at the airport, not enough hotel space. Seems to me some smart person could develop an app for that, because, you know, if somebody wanted to drive to my house, they needed a place to sleep rather than on the cold floor at DIA. I think people would sign up for that.
All you had to do was arrange for the helicopter to go pick them up and come back.
Right. No, but I mean, later in the night, later in the night, it was all passable, but these people still had to sleep on the floor at DIA.
Yeah, you didn't think you'd see people sleeping at DIA anymore, between having a hotel attached to the airport and the fact that it's the best, terrible weather airport in the country. But Ben, as you looked at how the different entities reacted, Denver Public Schools, DIA, also different power situations. What did you take away? Do you think? I mean, sometimes you say this kind of act of God, well, you just do the best you can. Did officials do the best they could?
I won't answer the last question, but let me offer this. Craig's right. I'm not a native, but I've been here a long time. I've seen a lot of snowstorms. And I understand the city has criteria for cleaning the streets. And one thing about criteria is, hopefully they're not immutable. You ought to reevaluate them on a regular basis. And this was a situation where pretty quickly you could see this storm was escalating, and perhaps it was time to reevaluate the criteria and do certain things so the city wouldn't be immobilized. I was like a number of people. I had a 9 a.m. meeting on Wednesday, and it wasn't canceled, and it was at Denver Water. So I got up and drove to Denver Water, and as soon as we finished our board meeting, Denver Water closed down. But I was closer to my office than I was to my home, so then I went to my office figuring, well, it's going to be easier to get to the office, and it almost wasn't, because with the blowing snow you couldn't see anything. So I got to my office, and I got there and said, well, gee, it's so bad outside, maybe I ought to just wait it out. Bad idea. I should have risked it, because by the time I drove home, the drifts were piling up, and, you know, my car got high-centered and stuck twice, and I had to shovel it out because the roads weren't plowed. And so I think the time has come where between DPS, the other city agencies, state government, you know, federal government, they didn't deliver the mail on Wednesday. They didn't run the garbage trucks on Wednesday. They didn't run the recycle trucks on Wednesday. There needs to be a little bit better coordination so that if everything's going to shut down, shut it all down and announce when. And one thing I will say to the meteorologist, they're not always wrong. There are times when they're actually right. And when they're right, and when you see their predictions are coming true, a faster response is probably warranted. So hopefully all levels of government get together and talk about this.
When we saw the blizzard warning come by, our friends over at KCNC Channel 4, we saw the blizzard warning on our phones on Tuesday afternoon. Well, it's 70 degrees. No one even had a jacket on. We're like, this is going to be crazy. And they were dead on. That's exactly right. John, speaking of news coverage, were you happy you weren't on blizzard coverage on Wednesday?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, having grown up in Chicago, went to school at Syracuse, did a 2-year stint in Buffalo, and now 30 in Buffalo and Denver here. I've seen all kinds of snow. Lake effect to blizzard yesterday. This was, as Craig said, epic. It was an epic kind of deal. But at the same time, if you've lived here for any length of time, you know that the streets are warm, snow is going to melt, the sun's going to come out tomorrow. And luckily we had that. You don't get that all the time in January. You don't get that in February. And so this little spring tree trimmer, you know, really ostensibly yesterday, it was all gone. I mean, it went down at least half. I mean, we had 20 inches. And so by yesterday, I mean, if you'd shoveled your sidewalk on the snow day, everything was clear. So, I mean, it's just another day in the Rockies. And, you know, it's very, very hard to predict weather here.
Patty, even though it's hard to predict weather and it was an epic kind of freak storm, did officials handle it correctly?
Well, you can see, for example, if they had plowed the side streets, the Denver public schools would have been open, because the problem was those turned to ice because they weren't plowed. And at 4 in the morning, after having already told people that the schools were going to be open, 4 in the morning they suddenly decide they're going to be closed. I have no dog in this hunt because I had the fastest drives ever to work and from work on Spear Boulevard, because Spear Boulevard was clear pretty much at 8 a.m. and at 6 p.m. It was in the middle that was horrible. But also, DIA didn't sound like they'd really planned ahead. TSA certainly didn't plan ahead. People are in hour-long lines this morning at 4 in the morning. The new hotel, nice to have one at DIA, except you've got to walk outside to get there, which isn't very helpful in this weather. And they had a bar that didn't open until late afternoon. People were desperately trying to get a glass of water in there at 1 o'clock. We were getting texts all day. This is a mess, and no one bothered to open it at the Westin. Now, maybe they couldn't get there because of Pena Boulevard, but it seemed a little more communication here could have smoothed things for people.